Thanks everyone for coming out to my talk. Today we're going to be talking about the future of front-end development in Open edX, also known as FedEx. I ask that you please hold questions till the end. Going to leave about 10 minutes for discussion. I'm also running a BOF session tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. in the breakfast area. Would love to chat with all of you. All right, so a little bit about myself. My name is Ari. I am a senior front-end engineer on the edX core team. I work in accessibility, which by necessity is front-end. And so FedEx itself is a working group within edX, meaning it's not a particular team, it's more a collection of people with shared interests. And our mission as a group is to empower the edX development community by continually defining, evangelizing, and supporting front-end best practices. edX development community, that means edX.org, but also all of you. All right, so I'm going to go over the existing state of the front end, some of the pain points inherent there, talk kind of at a high level about our approach for cleaning that up and making it easier to work with, and sneak preview at some of the new technologies that we're starting to adopt. All right, so let's jump right into prior art. So the edX platform, the Open edX platform is a Django application, and as such, it does a lot of rendering on the server side. This is just basic HTML rendered into template files. Because it's Django, a lot of it is done through Django templates, as well as Mako templates. And if you've modified the Open edX front end at all, I'm sure you're very familiar with these. Client side, we've got a little bit more going on. We've got Sass, which we use to build our style sheets. We have a healthy dose of jQuery, both old style kind of ad hoc jQuery classes, as well as sprinkled throughout our other views. Backbone and underscore, and although it's technically deprecated, we still do have a decent amount of CoffeeScript left to clean up. Some of you may also be familiar with the UX pattern library, which is an initiative that the edX front-end team took on a while back. It's our attempt at a CSS framework and UX style guide and HTML style guide, kind of all in one approach to best practices for front-end development. And that defines official brand colors, styles, fonts. There's a couple patterns in there, specific patterns. Adoption is on the low side. It's only within the out-of-the-box edX platform. It's only in a few views. And you can see more details on that at ux.edx.org. And asset management. So it's all done through Django. Everything is built via Django's asset pipeline. This means our Sass and CSS, as well as our JavaScript compilation, CoffeeScript compilation. And if you've worked with it before, particularly on a dev stack, you might be familiar with how slow it can be. All right, so that's a great jumping off point, I think, for some of the pain points involved with working on the Open edX front end. Performance is a big one, and performance matters because it's not just developers that have to deal with it, it's also our users. Our users see bad performance. It can really affect someone's experience on the platform. Our pages are somewhat heavy. We have a decent amount of static assets that get served with every page. Our style sheets are big. Because they're cached, Usually not such a big deal, but on a first page load, especially on a mobile device, it's pretty slow. Most of the time spent displaying a page is in the rendering, in the like painting that happens in the DOM. And this becomes much, much worse, exponentially worse, on a mobile browser or a slow network connection, which are both use cases that we care a lot about. So this is a standard average page view load time for all the pages across the Open edX platform on edX.org. And you can see the numbers might be a little small, but it hovers around 6 seconds, which isn't terrible, but it's not great either. But if you look, most of that time is spent in DOM processing and page rendering. There's a lot going on in every page load. Take a look at this, though. This is the native Android browser. Look at those numbers, 15 seconds. 15 seconds to load a page. Would any of you wait around for that? I don't think I would. And again, that DOM processing and page rendering is much, much greater here. Queuing and web application, those still are pretty low, but the rendering is really the pain point there. Also, slow network connections. So in the US and most of Europe, we're all in the green here. We get decent page load speeds for all of these pages, but if you look at some of the slower areas, most of Africa, good amount of South America, those are areas that don't necessarily have access to the fast internet connections that we're used to, and we kind of take for granted, and that we develop for, because that's what we use. So this is kind of a problematic map, I would say. Accessibility is another big concern. edX, as an organization, is very committed to providing accessible software both to learners and then, as Shelby mentioned earlier, on the studio side as well. But accessibility is kind of a hard problem. Solving it requires a lot of domain knowledge. You really have to know what you're doing. You need a deep understanding of the ways disabled users may or may not use the platform. So this is a big developer pain point. And as there's code duplication throughout the code base, say a big one for us is multiple modal dialog widgets. The more modal dialog widgets we have, the more we have to confirm that all of them are accessible. And when you only have one person on staff who has that domain knowledge, it can really, really add up. Maintenance. So this is a chimera. It is a mythical creature made of multiple different animals in one body. Multiple heads, all very angry, all very dangerous. And I feel like for the Open edX front end, this is kind of an apt metaphor. We've got our CoffeeScript, we've got our jQuery, we've got our backbone, we've got a lot going on there. And not everyone understands all of that right out of the box. There are areas of the code base. I've been with edX about 6 months. There are several areas that I still don't fully understand. And imagine what that's like for someone who's just starting off with the platform. It's not super developer friendly. And this is not a problem that's unique to Open edX. It happens really with any large code base. But it tends to be particularly bad with the front end, because front end technology moves so fast. It's hard to sort of keep up. But we want to fix this. So how are we going to do it? So our goals within FedEx, With our changes to the OpenEdX front end, we want an optimal experience for all of our users. This means slow network connections. This means mobile devices. This also means users with disabilities. We want to develop with maintenance in mind. Like I said, front end moves super fast. And if we think about things less in terms of this one particular framework and more as separate concerns, it becomes easier to build an application that's easy to maintain. And last but not least, we want to make it easy and enjoyable for developers to contribute to the OpenEdX front end. Internally, that applies to our staff developers, but it also means all of you. All right, so here's our approach. I don't know if any of you are as much fans of trash pop culture American news as I am, but if you are, you'll recognize Gwyneth Paltrow's conscious uncoupling. I like to think of it more as conscious decoupling in more of a software sense. So what does this mean? We, instead of an all-in-one solution to the front end, we want to decouple the concerns that don't necessarily need to depend on each other. So we've got multiple components to this. We've got data, we've got business logic, and we've got the appearance of the pages. And those three things definitely overlap. They definitely relate to each other, but they don't all need to depend on each other. So how do we make this work? We think of it more as less as an all-in-one application and more as loosely coupled services, kind of like a mini distributed system. We maintain integration points in between the three of them so that each service internally can change independently without breaking everything else. So what does that mean? So the data side of things, that's the content of the UI. This is stuff you might get from the server or from user input. It informs the business logic. And our integration points there are web APIs. The data might get sent over from the server, or user input. That is data as well. If you type into a form, that's data that we have to store. The business logic layer is how does the front end behave and how is it organized. This is generally handled in the JavaScript and the HTML. It's very important for this layer to be well maintained. It has to be consistent so that it lines up well with the data side and the appearance side. Accessibility lives here as well, and best practices largely live in the logic layer as well. And our integration points here, again, the data layer, the web APIs, and the way the DOM is organized so that CSS selectors work consistently. And appearance, this is how the UI looks. This is pretty much all CSS. It needs to be extensible, and we want it to be themable too. So a lot of people theme their OpenEdX instances. And this is just selectors. CSS only really relates to the rest of the DOM with its selectors. And here's kind of a complex diagram of how it all works together. You can see the data flow up from the server into the data layer. Business logic kind of handles generating the page, which then gets styled by appearance, and then user actions, form submissions, etc. Those flow back down through the logic layer to the data layer over onto the server. All right, so this is probably why you're all here. We're going to talk about what's coming next for the OpenEdX front end. So a lot of good stuff here. The primary goal right now is to modernize our front end. We want to bring it up to date. We want to be using the cool new technology that front end developers care about. We want to attract those open source contributions that are going to make a difference in our platform. and we want to keep our own developers happy as well. So ES 2015 is the big one. If you're not familiar with it, it is the current working specification of ECMAScript. It's super cool. You should all check it out if you haven't already. Basically, it is a very sane way to write JavaScript. We have classes, we have imports, all kinds of cool like object and array operations. It's wonderful. Bootstrap and React, as Joel mentioned earlier, and then Webpack for bundling. Also, I want to call attention to web fragments, which some of you might have used. Web fragments are a way to generate pluggable user interfaces via Django application. And so this is Django code that renders some chunk of UI into your application. These are currently used within the current working Xbox specification. Some of you may have used them. They can also be embedded directly into the Open edX platform itself. And those passed via OEP 12. There's also, for all of these things I'm talking about, there's a lot of great documentation on the Confluence wiki. I can send out a link to that later on if any of you are interested. Webpack is another big one. And this is really exciting. It's probably the most excited I've ever been about an asset management system. Webpack is the de facto standard for front-end asset management right now. It bundles JavaScript as well as Sass or less if you're using that instead. The great part is it does not depend on Django. So you can run it independently. You don't have to depend on the Django asset pipeline itself to bundle Webpack code. You can run it in a separate service if you like. Let's chat more about that tomorrow morning if you're interested in how to do that. And it enables us to write that lovely modern ES 2015 code through Babel. Babel is a transpiler that makes this ES 2015 code work in all browsers. Bootstrap. So, Bootstrap for CSS. Some of you might be familiar with it. Some of you might have used it. It's kind of divisive among the development community. A lot of people think it has too generic of a feel to it. Bootstrap 4 is coming out very soon. It's currently still in alpha, but there's a lot of great stuff in there. It contains a lot of mix-ins for not accessibility, responsiveness, so working on mobile. It makes it extremely easy to style an application, but the best part is it is themable. It is built to be themable. And Bootstrap themes are widely used. And there's a ton of community support for Bootstrap. So the beta of version 4 is coming out soon. Until then, we're working off the alpha. If you've been paying any attention to our Open edX proposal about Bootstrap, you may have noticed there's a bit of debate going on about RTL styling. We're planning on handling that via a plugin, a community plugin, and then RTL is in Bootstrap's roadmap for release. So once they figure it out, then we'll just get that for free. And if you're curious about this, please check out OEP 16. It is supposed to merge this week. So if you have input on this, please do it now. React. React is happening. OEP 11 merged a couple months ago, meaning that future front-end development for the Open edX platform will be done via React.js. I encourage you to check out that OEP for a little bit of the reasoning behind that, how we arrived at the React conclusion. basically, it encourages modularity and code reuse. React is built via components, which can then be extended or improved upon, and everything is encapsulated. JavaScript and HTML, all of that business logic lives in one place. It's easy to test in isolation. You can render individual components. You don't have to worry about the whole page. And the best part is it interoperates very well with legacy code. This could be kind of a double-edged sword because the easier it is to interoperate with legacy code, the less motivated people are to remove that legacy code. But for a platform the size of edX Platform's front end, we really need that. So yeah, and it's state managers can work well with legacy code as well. I personally have used React alongside Bootstrap, and it works better than you'd think. So that's React. And this is the thing I'm most excited about, is we are testing out a React component library. And this means these are kind of like building blocks for UI, reusable chunks of user interface to handle the kinds of UI challenges that may crop up at multiple points throughout the front end. So the example earlier, the modal dialog, the goal there is to have one modal dialog that we use where all of the accessibility concerns are just bundled together in one place. You don't have to worry about accessibility. You don't have to wait for an accessibility code review. You just drop it in and it works. And those are going to be versioned semantically, and available via NPM. We're still in the process of figuring out exactly how we want to do that. We're planning on proving it out first via Studio, and then if all goes well there, moving it into the LMS. But we're going to be very transparent about the development of this library. We definitely want your feedback, definitely want to hear from the community. We want to know what components you want to see, what components you would change, etc. And we want to make sure that these are as themable as possible. They should work with existing themes, future themes, potential Bootstrap themes. Yep. All right, so we want to hear from you. I have talked to a handful of people here so far about what they're doing with the OpenEdX front end, and I want to hear from more people. Tomorrow morning, Birds of a Feather session downstairs, 9 a.m. There's a lot of people here, so I don't know really how well a group this large would work, but yeah, come chat with us about front end as well as accessibility. Mark Sadecki will be there as well. There's a front end channel in the OpenEdX Slack. Check that out. Voice your concerns. I will post some links to relevant wiki pages. The edX code mailing list is another good place to get involved. PRs are welcome, although not required. The OEP repo is a good place to watch if you're curious about upcoming things going on with front end or elsewhere in the platform too. And yeah, come chat. Great, thank you. Questions? Over there.
In several places in the OEPs, there is an explicit rejection of Mako,
Mm-hmm.
And it all goes toward Django templates.
Yes.
Have you come to a conclusion as to whether to support detail or Jinja 2 or both?
Not that I'm aware of. As
Will be the reference then.
for Mako versus Django templates versus Jinja.
Well, Django templates have two processor backends,
Mm-hmm.
DTL and Jinja. And is there a preference as to which of those you want to support?
I am not aware of one at this time. If I find out, I will tell you. But yeah. I remember it was discussed, but I don't know if there's any plan to support that. Yes.
I'm asking about the React and the web fragments, because I don't think they will work well, right?
React and web fragments?
Yeah.
Web fragments could render React components. React lives entirely on the front end.
Yep.
A web fragment is more a way to plug something in to an existing Django workspace. So in your view that's rendered by the web fragment, you could use components. You could use whatever you want. It's not prescriptive in terms of exactly how it renders that front end. It just renders it.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Well, I sense that there are some complications in practice. So I guess that if we have to go with web fragment and React, we will face some complications in the future, right?
With the React code?
So React is no longer in control of the whole rendering process, right?
Yeah, it entirely runs on the client, whereas web fragments are rendered more on the server.
Okay.
You could render a page on the server that then, when it loads on the client, makes use of React components.
Okay.
But there's no reason why you couldn't use React components or anything else, jQuery, Angular components, if that's how you want to do it, within a fragment as well.
All right. Then I think I'll wait and see how it works. Thank you.
Right there?
Yeah. What are the immediate plans around optimization for mobile? From what I could understand from the presentation was that, okay, bringing an asset management system will save you some time from the delivery of static assets. But there's an inherent slowness on all the web views that needs some native development on the mobile front end to deal with. So any immediate plans to reduce the time? Because on a browser, it's fine if you look at something for 8-9 seconds and it doesn't load, because there's so much real estate. You can switch windows, you can go to some other window, pass some time. But on a mobile, you are so focused that even waiting for 3-4 seconds and the attention is lost.
Yeah, totally. So that's a great question. The way it works now is we've got this huge CSS bundle and JS bundle, and that's site-wide or platform-wide, IDA-wide. We want to bundle these things more intelligently so that when you request a page, you only get the JavaScript that page cares about, or the CSS that page cares about, with the common stuff abstracted out into another bundle. So that would then get cached. The common shared stuff throughout all of the pages would get cached, and page-specific code bundled separately. We haven't done enough with that yet within the Django asset pipeline. Webpack just landed in LMS and Studio, I think, within the past month. So there's still definitely some work to do there, but it comes with a lot of great plugins that enable use cases like this. So yeah, we want to cut down that file size as much as possible. Yep.
Yeah, so you talked about how React has this double-edged sword of interoperability with existing components and the existing technologies. What's the plan for actually getting rid of those existing legacy technologies in the code base?
That's a really good question. So the plan is future development will take place with React. I believe we have a React rollout plan within Confluence. I will dump that into Slack as well. The plan is to deprecate Bootstrap and encourage React by July of this year. Or not deprecate Bootstrap, but move to React by July, deprecate Bootstrap and previous technologies by the end of 2017. And then in the future, anytime someone touches like an old view, the encouragement is to re-implement it using React. Now, that does add a bit of developer overhead. Sometimes it's easier to just patch one line in a Bootstrap view. But the hope is that React is really easy to use. If you've used it before, it's easy to ramp up with. And we're hoping that as well, with the addition of the reusable components, it will make it a lot easier for developers to go in and do the right thing.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, right there.
Thank you. I love the emojis. And also just a big shout out to the team. I think that's a fantastic step forward. So just thinking a little bit about accessibility in sort of the grander real estate sense. What sort of browsers are you looking to support? And fun joke, I still get asked for Internet Explorer 6.
We officially support the last two versions of every browser, as well as IE 11. So last two plus IE 11 is our official support right now. We don't have a subset of supported mobile browsers right now. Probably if we did come up with one, it would be based on usage statistics for our platform, but again, we want to hear from you about that. What browsers do we absolutely need to support? Because there's as many browsers almost as there are phones. Mm-hmm. Is that a public resource? All right.
It's on Open edX, based on Open edX, Open
OpenEDU.
Yeah, we have a 30% mobile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll have to check that out.
And now edX is a little ugly in mobile.
Yeah, well, we're working on it. All right. We good?
Yeah, so I think just announce the BOS again. Yeah. Or
Oh, yeah.
BOF,
BOF,
sorry.
9 a.m. tomorrow, downstairs, breakfast area. Come find us. Come chat with us. We want to answer your questions. All right. Thank you so much.
Started. Good afternoon, everybody. Delighted to be here. I think we'll try to take about 30 minutes together to share a few concepts, and then 5 or 10 minutes for you to ask any questions towards the end, if that works for you. My name is Paul Hunter. I work at a business school in Switzerland called IMD, which you may or may not have heard of. What I want to do really in the next 30 minutes is to take you through 4 things. Tell you very, very quickly who IMD is, what is our concept of digital learning, show you some examples of what that digital learning looks like, and then share with you what we have discovered, what we believe we've discovered are the 7 secrets of making digital learning really impactful. So that's what we'll try and do in the next 30 minutes or so. In terms of who IMD is, this is a picture of our campus in Switzerland. It's a beautiful part of the world. If you've never been, I can certainly recommend it. It looks like this in the autumn, so it's quite spectacular. I know Madrid is a beautiful place too, but we certainly do like our countryside here. We have around about 7,000 students per year who come through our campus. We're focused on executive education. That's really 100% of what we do. We try to offer what we call Swiss excellence with a global perspective. So if I was doing things properly, we really would have started at 1:45 today to be Swiss timing, but I think I've kind of got into Spanish timing already. And then we try to be flexible, we try to be customized, and we try to make sure that we have an impact. That's really what we're trying to garner, is a meaningful impact on our learners. The values that we have, 3 values, is how can we be open, how can we be collaborative, and how can we be pioneering. And if you're interested in rankings, we tend to do pretty well in the rankings. In fact, last week, the Financial Times had just ranked us for the 6th year running #1 in the world in open programs. So that's just a little bit about who we are and what we do. So what about digital learning at IMD? What does that look like? We insert digital learning into an overarching structure that we call the corporate learning network. So companies pay to be part of the corporate learning network, and it gives them access to a different set of services. And the ones that we're focusing on today is what we call our global leadership in the cloud programs. This is the digital learning that we offer. They're designed by our faculty. Every participant has a coach to help them through that journey. We'll go into that a little bit in detail. Each program is 8 weeks long, and you get a certificate from IMD at the end of the program if you're successful, just in the same way as you would get a certificate from a face-to-face program. So we make no certification distinction between whether you've been to a face-to-face program or an online program. They have equal value for us. So what does the journey look like for a participant? What are they doing on a weekly basis? So essentially we have a virtual cycle of 4 different things. First of all, some knowledge dissemination. I would say globally, we're much less in the business of knowledge dissemination, and we're much more in the business of learning application. But before you do learning application, there needs to be a little bit of knowledge dissemination. So first of all, we have nice videos, readings, and case studies to help people learn. So they're essentially getting familiar with the concept. Then there's an interaction piece, and interaction happens in 3 different ways. We have group interaction, and group interaction is primarily giving students an opportunity to grapple with the concept. So if this is our strategic thinking program, and we've explained to you a model on strategic thinking, here is a small group of 3 or 4 or 5 people. We're going to ask you to apply that strategic thinking model to a particular situation. We're not especially interested in your answer. So if you're applying the strategic model to the Wall Street Journal and you say, this is what we think the Wall Street Journal should do, we're less interested in your answer. We're more interested in giving you an opportunity to grapple with the concept. And the reason why that's so important is because we're going to expect you to apply that concept to your situation at the end of this week. So group work is all about applying the concept and grappling with the concept. Buddy assignments, so we pair people off. Buddy assignments is all about disclosure. Buddy assignment is me telling you a challenge that I have in my professional context based on the concept that we've just shown you. And normally, as my buddy, you will reciprocate. And we will start and build a bond together. We will start to have a connection. That horizontal connection and that horizontal interaction is very important for keeping people engaged throughout the whole process. And then cohort discussions you're probably familiar with. This is where we have an opportunity to leverage the wisdom of the crowd, the wisdom of the group, to see what other insights that we might have. So some learning, some interaction, then we're moving straight into application. So let me try to make this very concrete for you. Let's imagine that you're on a program that we're calling Learning Leadership, to go through the basic principles of leadership. And this week is Conflict Management Week. Excuse me. This week is Conflict Management Week. So you've watched some videos of one of our professors explaining to you some of the principles around conflict management. It won't just be a toolkit, here are 5 things that you should do to manage a conflict, but it will already be some engaging questions. If a conflict is happening between you and some other person, what might be the reasons for that? Is it really because that other person is a terrible person? Or what is it that you're bringing to the party that might actually provoke a conflict with that other person? What baggage are you bringing with you into the room that might actually be a source of tension and maybe the source of the conflict? So some videos to give you some thinking about conflict management. In your group work, you've watched managers have a conflict or a difficult conversation with one of their team members. And as a group, you're asking yourselves the question, what do we think this manager did really well? What do we think this manager didn't do so well? What can we learn from this conflict interaction that we've just been watching? The application part is this week, that difficult conversation that you've been putting off for 3 months or 6 months or in some occasions 5 years, guess what? This week, that difficult conversation is happening. So we will give you a template to help you prepare for that conversation, but more importantly, we'll give you a template to allow you to debrief that conversation so that you can share with your coach, and this is where we get to the improving part, you can share with your coach how that conversation went. The coach is there as a catalyst for learning transfer. The coach is not there as a policeman or a policewoman. The coach is not there to say, you've completed 60% or you've watched these 3 videos, oh, don't forget you have to read that book chapter. That's not our concept. We're trying to make our learners autonomous. We try to make them self-manage the activities that they have to do. But your coach is there to give you feedback on how good or bad a job you've done in applying that concept to your situation right now this week. As I mentioned before, we're less about knowledge dissemination, we're more about learning application. We're interested in the impact that this is having on you, on your team, on your business right now this week. And that's what the coach is there to do. What you're doing in week 4 builds on what you did in week 3, which builds on what you did in week 2, etc., etc., etc. So we run these programs in a range of flavors. We have 12 programs right now, and I can take you through those in a moment. Less important, I guess, is for you to know the portfolio. More important is to give you a flavor of what those programs look like. So I'm going to show you an excerpt, a little video from one of those programs, and I want you to ask yourself this question. Actually, I'll maybe get you to discuss with your neighbor very briefly. From a pedagogical point of view, what makes this a successful video? What makes this an engaging video? So I'm going to show you a clip from one of our programs called Being Innovative. With a bit of luck, this will open up for me. So please ask the question from your point of view. Whoops. Hold on. I think I may need to slide this across. There we go. Oh, hang on. Bear with me. I think that's just about right. We may have lost a little bit of screen, but we'll do our best. Okay. What makes this effective from a learning point of view?
I mentioned there were 3 principles to think about. The first was more ideas are better than fewer. The second is more minds are better than fewer. Pretty much talked about that. The third one, however, is quite important, and we need to emphasize it, and that is more different minds are better than more of the same. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let's go back to 1912, the race to discover the South Pole. At that point in time, the South Pole is arguably the last unexplored spot on the planet, okay? All we know about the South Pole is it's distant, cold, dark. much like the future that we're all facing, uncertain. There's two teams side by side, literally project teams in parallel, who are racing to the pole. One team is led by Robert Scott, captain in Her Majesty's Royal Navy, early 20th century. That may in fact be the biggest brand in the world. He's got a large group, he's resource rich and ready to go. The other team is led by a failed medical student from Norway, Roald Amundsen. He has a much smaller team, far fewer resources, and he's also ready to go. It's roughly 3,000 kilometers from base camp to the pole and back. It's frigid cold. It's going to be dark for much of the race, and we're going through the unknown. We have no idea whether there are mountains there or not. Scott has more resources, but he's spoken to fewer people. Amundsen has fewer resources, but he's spoken to more and more different people. Scott is outfitted by Burberry. Amundsen is outfitted by Greenlander Eskimos. Now, the Greenland is far away from the South Pole, but the Greenlanders live in cold, forbidding climates. And Amundsen paid a lot of attention to what they wore and what they ate. So Amundsen's team made it to the South Pole 6 weeks before the better equipped Scott team. Amundsen's team gained weight on their return to base camp after 3,000 miles of going through the frigid cold and taxing conditions. Scott's team never returned. They died of starvation and exposure. The difference between life and death in this case was a difference between who the team spoke to before they went. Amundsen spoke to Eskimos who had lived in the cold, forbidding, unknown. Scott spoke to people who lived in London, who were comfortable in the world around a sophisticated urban area. Scott brought horses to the South Pole when dogs were more appropriate. Who are you talking to? That's the real question. Often, more different minds are better than more of the same, because it's only by consulting different minds that you'll be able to get an edge in thinking about the world around you.
All right, here's what I'd like you to do. With your neighbor, 2 minutes discussion, 2 questions. Question number 1, one thing that you have retained from this video, one learning piece that you've remembered. And number 2, what in your opinion makes this, from a pedagogical point of view, an effective video? Okay, 2 minutes discussion with your neighbor, and we'll debrief that in a minute. Okay?
Mirror screen standing?
I'm not going to be showing any other videos now, so I think we're okay.
You have only one video, no?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to show it, so I think we're okay. But thank you. Would you by any chance have any chalk that I can write on the board? No, for the board, Thank you. It's a little bit old world, but that's okay. Thank you. Okay, so let's bring that discussion together. All right. Hello. Okay, great, thank you. So, one thing you've remembered, one thing you think you remember from that video, a volunteer, something you think you might remember from that video. If I have no volunteers, I'm going to have to jump on people by the color of their shirt. Yes, please. Pardon? What sucks? Burberry sucks. Okay, that's all right. That's what, I don't know if we have a roving microphone, do we, that we can pick up these answers? Maybe not. That's okay. You just have to shout loudly. So one good learning point: Burberry sucks. All right. The other one linked with that is never believe anybody who lives in London. That's another one you could add into the Burberry one. Other learning points, things that you've remembered. Yes.
The successful leader knows who to consult.
A successful leader knows who to consult. Excellent point. Thank you very much. Yep.
Talk to people with different point of view than you have.
Talk to people who've got a different point of view than you have. Absolutely. Other things?
Talk to the actual experts instead of people who say they are experts.
Okay, so to talk to people who really know what they're talking about. Okay. One more.
Innovation comes from diversity of opinion.
Innovation comes from diversity of opinion. Great. So lots of very nice learning points that come out from a 3-minute video. Fabulous. What makes this work well from a pedagogical point of view?
Visual variety.
Say a little bit more.
There was some change in what you were focusing on, and it was thoughtfully done relative to what was said.
Okay, so visual variety, really important. Who is my biggest competitor in the field of e-learning? Who do you think is my biggest competitor? Facebook is certainly one. My biggest competitor in e-learning is email. Okay, here's my nightmare scenario. We spend lots of time and energy creating funky videos and nice online programs, and then busy executive has laptop here, second screen here, busy doing my emails with this other video kind of running in the background, and let's see what happens. I know when that happens, I'm certainly not remembering much of the video. I'm definitely not going to retain the learning points, and there's no chance of me applying it. Okay? I need people to down tools for 3 minutes and say, this video is sufficiently engaging that I'm just going to stop my emails for 3 minutes and watch this video. Okay, we saw on an earlier presentation this morning about the ideal length of video. So most of our videos are 3 or 4 minutes long because we think we have a fighting chance of capturing your attention for 3 or 4 minutes. We don't have much of a chance of capturing your attention for 40. So really important that we're getting people to focus on the video because that's how we're increasing our chances of retention and that's how we're increasing our chances of application. So visual variety, very important. Was that a hand? Yep.
So I was going to add that his effective use of storytelling really helps to keep your attention, connect, I would say, create more value in the concepts that are being presented.
Fabulous. Everybody loves a story, and everybody really loves a true story. So if you have an opportunity to illustrate a learning point by using a true story, this is why some films in the cinema are so much more popular than others, because if you have a film that's based on a true story, everybody loves that. That allows you to make an emotional connection. It allows you to say, what if I was in that situation myself? So storytelling really important, true stories even better. There was a hand right at the back a moment ago. Yep. Yes? So putting the theory into context. Okay, really important. Theory into context. So theory into context. All right, thank you. There was a hand over here.
Yeah, and I also like the balance between these visualizations, pictures, and talking human to me because I still have my contact with the author.
So balance is really important. Eye contact is really important, so you feel like the person is talking to you. Really important. Okay, there was a few other hands I saw. Yep.
No wall of text through like slides or anything.
Okay, targeted text. Did you see the way that we presented the text? Okay, was it in straight lines? Okay, the text kind of came all wibbly wobbly all over the place. So you mentally, your brain had to go to read this. That's another way of keeping you engaged. Yep, I'll come to you in 2 seconds. Yep.
It started and closed with the same lesson line. So that's the main point of the video.
Yeah. More different minds are better than more of the same. Bookended. Really important, so you remember that. And also, what else happened at the end? Can you remember what else happened at the end? Just before we got to more different minds are better than who are the same, or maybe just after. Anybody remember what happened right at the end? Pardon? Recap. There was a recap, yeah, and there was something else.
He asked a question about who are you talking to or not talking to.
Brilliant. He asked a question. The real question here is, who are you talking to? So if you think back to the little circle that I showed you, we're already in this video starting to plant the seed of application. Hey, this is a nice video. It's great that you understand the learning point, but learner, please put your ears up now. I'm asking you a question. Who are you talking to? And guess what? Your individual assignment this week is to go and talk to 5 people that normally you don't talk to see if you might learn something about the customer experience in your organization. So straight through application from the learning. Yep. I haven't forgotten you. I'm coming back to you. Yes?
It's useful too that he's got a counterintuitive story.
Yes?
Because you learn a lot more from a counterintuitive story than an obvious.
Yeah. Counterintuitive is good. Crisis is good. The odds are stacked against me is good. Those are the kind of stories that people love. Coming back to you now.
I think for me the content didn't overlap with a lot that I knew, so it was pretty original content for me.
Okay.
If it overlapped with other stories that I knew, then I would be less.
So it was original or it was fresh? Okay, great. Anything else that you liked, that you thought made this work from a pedagogical point of view?
I have slightly extended pedagogy in the sense that even for online learning, we ought to force people to talk to each other in small cohorts and teams.
Yeah, really important. So that horizontal interaction piece is super important. If it's just me on my own with my laptop in my bedroom, probably not fabulous. Okay, so that horizontal interaction part is really important. Okay, any other burning ones before we move on? Last one?
They don't give you the actual concept they want to give you until just the very end.
Yeah, okay, so we keep you, let's say that when we drop the concept is towards the end. When you drop it is very important. Sorry, concept I should be saying. I'm sorry, concept. One other thing that's really important from a visual point of view, and this is actually important in videos in general, is the ability to do a comparison. So we had this team over here, team A, and they did this, and then you probably saw the video go like this, and then we had this team B over here, and they did that. That's very effective from a visual point of view, because you can't possibly miss that we're talking about 2 different things. You can do A, or you can go over here and you can do B. Really important that you allow people to compare and contrast for themselves, so then they can lead to their own conclusions. Okay, let's finish off, because I've just got a signal that we have to be careful about time. Let's finish off with the 7 secrets of high-impact digital learning, some of which we've already talked on when we looked at the video. First one is really important. Start at the end. Make sure that you have super clear learning objectives for this program, for this unit, for this week, for this activity. You need to deploy what you might call classic backwards learning design. So what are our objectives? How are we going to measure them? Okay, now let's design the content. Sometimes you will have faculty members who will come and say, I've got fabulous content, let's turn this into a digital extravaganza. That's nice, but it's the wrong way around. We need to say, okay, what do we want people to be able to do by the end of this week? How are we actually going to measure that in a meaningful way? Okay, now I'm in a place to create the content which will allow me to measure, which will deliver on the objectives. So start at the end with the learning objectives. Secondly, certainly in our world, so this might be slightly controversial, so feel free to throw bricks at me when we do the Q&A in a moment. Certainly in our world, we need to treat executives like executives. These are busy folk who've got a million things to do, and I'm asking them to take another 4 or 5 hours out of a busy day. We need to treat them like a responsible adult. Most of the executives that I work with are not in a situation where they have 2 clearly defined choices. Should I do A? Should I do B? They don't live in a world of black and white. They live in a world of grey. And what we want them to do is to be able to make discernible choices based on the data that they have. It may not be the ultimate ideal solution, but they've got to make a solution based on the data that we have. So you will not find in any of our online programs multiple choice questionnaires. Okay? I have a pet hate, personally, of multiple choice questionnaires. So should Paul do A or B or C? That's okay if you're 10 years old. That's okay if it's on the back page of a Sunday magazine. I'm less convinced that it's okay in the world of adult learning. But feel free to shoot me down on that in the question and answers. Number 3, change the channel. Sometimes I've seen digital learning which pretty much amounts to putting a camera in the back of a classroom, a little bit like we're doing now, having the camera following somebody in front. Maybe you'll just about make out the slides from the back, and we call that digital learning. That's not digital learning. Okay, if you go to a rugby match, I'm a rugby fan. I come originally from Ireland. I love going to watch rugby and when Ireland are playing and systematically winning, as they often do. Okay, when I go and watch a rugby match and pay money to sit in the stadium of 60,000 other people, I'm not going for the view. Okay, I'm going for the atmosphere. I'm going for the fun. I'm going for the emotional connection. I'm going for a whole range of reasons. But what I can actually see of the match is actually pretty limited. I'm probably watching a bit on screen and a bit live. When I'm watching it at home, that's not what I want. I don't want to see a small, tiny little pitch. I want camera angles of rugby boots. I want people crying in the crowd. I want to see somebody wiping sweat off their cheek, whatever it might be. The BBC have understood what makes this an engaging television experience. It's different from putting a camera in the stadium and letting it roll. So make sure you use the right channel for the right audience. Don't try and repackage Classroom. It doesn't normally work. Respect the holy trinity of virtual learning. What does that mean? Design, production, delivery. Those 3 have to go together. Okay, so people who are designing, that we mentioned up front, backwards learning design, what are my objectives, how am I going to measure them, create my content. Design's got to be really clear. That design needs to inform the production. If production go ahead and make videos without linking with design, we're going to get nice videos. We'll probably get good-looking videos, but we may not get videos that trigger a learning response. We just get nice videos. Same for delivery. The coaches who are giving feedback, they may still give great feedback to participants, and the participants will have a nice debrief of their 360 or whatever it might be. But if it's not linked with the learning objective, it's not linked with what we're trying to do, it will have been a nice intervention, but it won't have been a targeted intervention. Design, production, delivery have to go hand in hand. Number 5, and you've mentioned this already, make sure the content is fresh and easy to digest. Okay? Telling stories that are timeless stories like this are fine, but pulling out the case study of GE did this 100 years ago or somebody else did this 100 years ago, that's nice, but it's not working. Fresh means instant, current, and give people little chunks. Don't get them to watch a 50-minute video, they're not going to do it, but do get them to watch small little videos. Really important, number 6, is relevance. Particularly if I'm a busy executive. This is a little bit like the principle of Weight Watchers. Okay? I have never been on Weight Watchers myself. I probably should. But here's what happens in Weight Watchers. You go through a week of misery. You eat lettuce. You don't get to eat chocolate. You don't get to drink beer. You have a pretty miserable time from Monday to Friday. On Saturday, you turn up for your weight watching session and you get onto the scales in front of a group of people and you say, wow, I've lost half a kilo or whatever it is that you've lost. All of a sudden, the misery of the last 5 days evaporates because you've just seen why you've done it. Here's the connection. Wow, this has served a meaningful purpose. Really important on a learning journey that at the end of every week, the end of every segment, the person can say, yeah, I can apply this in my business. This is making sense for me right now, this week. And finally, make sure that the people who are giving feedback know what they're talking about. That's super important as well. Sometimes, from a peer learning point of view and a peer feedback point of view, it can be a bit of hit and miss. Sometimes, if the program's well designed, peer learning can be fabulous. Sometimes, if the program's not well designed, peer learning is like the blind leading the blind. Let me, who don't really know what I'm talking about, give you feedback on something that I don't really understand, and then we think that's been a good learning engagement. That's often not the case. So try to make sure that your feedback loop is populated by people who actually know what they're talking about. That's also increased the chances that people will actually listen to what they say. So I'm going to stop there. I think we've got about 5 minutes for questions and answers. Yeah, 5? 3 minutes for question and answers. Okay, any questions?
How do you emulate the experience that we've had with your facilitation in this session in a digital scenario?
So I think the question was, how do we analyze? Emulate. So I didn't get the question, so let's say the question again then.
How do you emulate that experience we had with your facilitation in a digital scenario?
Okay, so we make the coaches that we use in our face-to-face interaction are exactly the same coaches that we use in the digital interaction. Whether you're doing the coaching face-to-face or over the phone or a Skype or whatever it might, it doesn't matter. It's the technique of being able to understand the people, understand where they're coming from, make an emotional connection, ask smart questions, and then give meaningful feedback. Whether that's face-to-face or digital, it's the same skill set that you need. Okay? One more question, so we'll go for you because I snapped you before.
How do you measure if a piece of learning content, meets these metrics and to what extent?
So we have, I guess, what you might call traditional measurement techniques. So people fill in a self-reported questionnaire, et cetera, but we deploy other tools as well. We use 360. We use something that's called Net Promoter Score, where we say, how likely would you be to recommend this? We get feedback from your peers. We get feedback from your boss. We get feedback from your direct reports. And where possible, we try to measure quantitative things as well. So if you're on the negotiation program or the finance program or the pricing program, and one of your clear objectives was to be able to increase your prices by 3% at the end of this program, then we go back and measure that 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later, and see whether that's actually been the case. Okay, I think we're going to get in trouble. We are in trouble already, so we're in trouble already. Thank you very much for your time. If you want to grab me for questions at the end, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Is everyone enjoying the conference so far? Yeah? Awesome. Good. That's great to hear. My name is Bill DeRusha. I'm an engineering manager at edX on the Learner team. This is Jasper Ho. He is on the product team for Learner. And we're here to talk about internationalizing edX.org. Before we get started, I want to give a little bit of background to how we run our edX site, a little bit of what our internationalization strategy is, and kind of the relevance to the open edX community. edX.org, we run our own custom marketing site. There are actually a lot of instances of open edX that opt to use a custom marketing site as well. Does anyone here use a custom marketing site? No? Cool. Good to know. So for us, our internationalization strategy is, there's a lot of great work that's been done on open edX to internationalize. We have Arabic, we have Spanish, we have a lot of languages. Our marketing site right now is just in English, which is a real blocker for users being able to access all the great internationalization work that's happened over the last 3+ years for open edX. So we're trying to fill that gap, and that's really where our strategy is focused, is opening that gate so that we can really provide the value that open edX has been providing for the last 3 years. We can start to take advantage of that for all of our learners on edX.org, and it'll allow us to really, it'll make sense for us to start driving more of the internationalization capabilities of open edX as well, as you'll see later on in the presentation. But we're also going to talk generally about some key best practices for internationalization period. If you're creating X-blocks, if you're contributing code back, internationalization is really important to everyone. So it's not just our project that we're, the thing that Anant announced, all of that is our own marketing site, but it has real implications for everyone contributing code to edX. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jasper, who's going to lead you through some of the more strategic approaches of how you should be thinking about internationalization.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Bill. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. So again, my name is Jasper. I'm a product manager here at edX. I work with the Learner group. And there are 2 core concepts to internationalizing a website. So let's go over a little bit of abbreviations. So internationalization, it's kind of hard to write out every single time. And so you'll see us use an abbreviation I18N for internationalization. You'll also see us use an abbreviation for localization, L10N. The 18 is the 18 characters in between the very long word, and the 10 is the 10 characters in between. So, next. All right, so I'm going to give you a very abstract kind of definition here. Internationalization is developing features so that they may be used interchangeably between different locales and languages. I'm going to burn through this pretty fast. Localization is implementing locale languages or content using the internationalized features. Now, that's a very kind of abstract definition. So I'm going to give us an analogy. So imagine a car. Everybody here has seen a car? Yes? All right. So imagine a car for a single market. Now, for a single market, the driver's side is either on the left or the right side. Take, for instance, the United States. The driver is on the left side. And in the UK, the driver is on the right side. So what does that have to do with localization and internationalization? Localizing a car is choosing which side you're going to put the steering wheel on based on what the market wants. Now, in the UK, that side is the right side. In the US, that side is on the left side. Now, internationalizing this car is basically making sure that we're not developing and maintaining 2 completely different car frames, the left side for the US and the right side for the UK, but that we are modifying the framework of the car so that it makes it easier to install a steering wheel both on the left or the right side, so that when we expand to other markets, the only thing you have left to do is to choose which side you want to put the steering wheel on. However, localizing a car isn't just the steering wheel. That's just the most obvious thing. So, going back to our website, localizing and internationalizing our site isn't just making an English word into a Spanish word. It is considering every aspect of the website from the perspective of the learner. So how do we do that? We made a list. And how do we make that list? We literally went through every single kind of page, banner, section, area, etc., and we asked ourselves two questions. One, would the learner have a better experience if that piece of content, if that area were customized to their language preferences? And if it was yes, then we wrote that down as a bullet point. And then the immediate following question is, how do we do it? And that's internationalizing that kind of feature. And if we said, well, we don't want to maintain two car frameworks, we want to make it easy, that actually just is another bullet point on that list. Now you might be thinking to yourself, our web page is 100 pages. How big of a list am I going to have? Well, we had a very, very, very big list. So one of the things that we really kind of considered, and this is just an example of internationalizing and localizing something, is the partners' logos on our homepage. Everyone has seen our homepage, yes? All right. So when you go to our homepage, you can see there are 5 logos there. The yellow, which is the localization, we asked ourselves, would it be beneficial, would our learners have a better experience landing on the home page if we showed them partners that provided them with Spanish content? Because that's a little bit more relevant to them, right? And then we asked ourselves, well, how do we make it so that we don't have to maintain 2 completely different home pages? And so that is a great example of internationalization versus localization. Anyway, going back to that list, how do we figure out what the most important things are on that list, and how do we prioritize them? So I don't know if you guys remember this, but Ian, our VP of product, mentioned that we prioritize based on the learner impact. If the learner is getting a lot of value out of that localization and out of that customization, that will put it higher above everything else. Now, well, that's easy enough to say, right? How do I make that determination? And we determined that using data. And by talking to our learners and by talking to our partners as well. Some data points. Google Analytics. You can look at, for instance, a percentage bounce. You can look at number of sessions. You can look at which pages are the most likely a learner will land on from Google. And for us, it was pretty obvious. The most people landed on our website typically land on the homepage and specific course about pages. You can see those pages out in production today. So this is a bit of a shortened list from that insane list of things that we had to consider by going through every single page and every single section. I really wanted to point out some of the more interesting things. Bill's going to cover the more like tactical level stuff, such as date, time, and currency formatting. An interesting one is legal implications. In Europe, there are privacy laws that are very different than that in America. And we touched on custom marketing capabilities, and the last thing I really want to point out is SEO implications. That's actually very, very important to kind of get right the first time because you don't want to ruin your SEO score. All right, so what are we doing next? After having laid out all of this stuff, we're going to focus on the search page and making sure that our learners have a good experience in trying to find their courses. You can see us, we've made some progress already today. It's not 100% complete, but if you go to our course search, you can see that the facet's already localized. After the search, we're going to focus on the e-commerce checkout page. All right, so again, I spoke at a very high level, and I'm going to hand the presentation over to Bill, and Bill's going to talk about a few tactical things.
Ooh, a little mood lighting. Ooh. So, perfect lighting for some implementation best practices. All right, cool. It's like a light show. This is great. So, how many people know about the HTML lang attribute? A couple? Oh, awesome, great. That's great to hear. A lot of people don't know about this attribute, which is why I wanted to call it out specifically. It's an HTML attribute where you can mark up your markup and actually describe the language that the content is going to be in. So for this, it's especially important for screen readers. If you are a user using a screen reader, this is the difference between having a screen reader yell at you, hola, jalapeno, quesadilla, which is fine, and they'll get it, but it's not going to be great. They're going to notice that you didn't take the time. It pulls them out of the experience of your website and has them start thinking about like, oh, they weren't thinking about me. Another really nice thing for visual users, you can actually style based on the lang attribute, based on the value in the lang attribute. So if you are trying to localize for Japanese language users, you can show them an ordered list, and it'll say 1, 2, 3, and that'll be fine for them. They'll get by. Or you can actually style that list in katakana or hiragana or whatever you deem most appropriate for that locale. And it's just a nice little things like that like they tell a user, you're paying attention, you care about making the site the best for them, and it keeps them in the moment, in the site, and they don't have to take that step back and think, oh, this is weird, okay, I'll get over it. Oh, there we go. The next piece that's really important is language detection. How do you know what language to even show for user? What locale should I be using? Here's a really great one, user preferences. If the user has already told you, I want to see the site in Spanish, hello, show them the site in Spanish. We're going to be doing the work that Jasper just mentioned for e-commerce. E-commerce right now is mostly localized. It's mostly internationalized, but it doesn't know about the user language preference that you picked in your LMS, and that's frustrating. So some of the work that we're going to be doing is just wiring up the user preference. It's that easy. You can do it in cookies. You can do it in your JSON web token. The implementation details are not as important as the higher level, like just think about what the user's telling you and listen to them. URLs is another great way that learners will tell you, I want to see your content in this locale. These are some great SEO choices. You can use query parameters, lang equals. That's not great SEO. Google's not going to know what to do with that. So given the choice, we would definitely say that using TLDs and path prefixing and subdomains is a better choice if all else is equal for you. Definitely go with these, and then you can switch out your content based on this, and the user's telling you, hey, this is what I want to see. Or you can put those directly in a Spanish marketing email, a Spanish communication, and know that they're going to stay in that language context the whole way through. The last way, if the user isn't directly telling you by going to a website or clicking on, I want to see this in Spanish, the browser is going to send an accept language header with most requests. This is based on your language settings that you've set for the internet at large. It's just a string. It's just a language code. It's going to say ES. If you're poly whatever, yeah, you guys get it. Poly whatever. Spanish, and then if you don't have Spanish, show me French. This user, Spanish actually doesn't have a weight, which gives it the highest weight, and then they want German, and then they want French. It's important to note that this spec does not care about order. So just reading it left to right or right to left isn't necessarily going to get you the right thing. It's better than doing nothing if you don't have the ability to actually parse the weights, but if you do, it's definitely worth taking that extra step and really listening to what the user is saying. Now, if you aren't going to use URLs to manage your content, and you're just going to use like the browser, and you care about caching, these are all going to resolve to Spanish, and they're all going to be different cache keys. I think you guys can see the implications. This is one of literally infinite cache keys, which basically is like, why are you caching at all? We do this on a couple of pages on our site right now, and the way we resolve this is the layer before the cache, we actually have some logic to resolve all of these headers to what we are going to show the user. So all of these would resolve to Spanish, and we'll actually cache on Spanish content rather than an infinite number. So just little things like that will help you give the right thing to the user, but also not destroy your site performance. All right, now meat and potatoes time, string translation. This is something that hopefully people are a little bit familiar with already. It's mostly just wrapping strings, but the quality of your translation really depends on how you go about wrapping these strings. So variables is a really interesting place where people can run into some pitfalls. So let's say we have an example. We want to show this string to deliver this to the browser. We're going to bold, my car is a variable name car model, and bold. You could just grab getText and wrap the string, the static string, and call it a day. And just as a point of note, this most of these slides are going to be in Python, but this Django getText is based on Python getText, which is based on GNU getText. It's all standard, and it's implemented in most languages. There are libraries that already do this. So this is relevant for everything, not just Python, but Python seems like a pretty comfortable thing for everybody, so we're going to go with that. So what's wrong with this? Well, if you decide, I don't want to bold this anymore, and it should be italicized, well, now this string that you translated is no longer a valid key, and someone has to go back in and retranslate my car is a. You've already translated it, but now it's not in your dictionary anymore. So one easy thing to do is just move HTML out of those getText keys. Second thing is, my car is a blank, depending on what language you are in, has huge grammar implications. Car model might actually need to go in the middle. It might need to be my car model is a, depending on what language you're actually displaying. This doesn't support that at all. Also, let's say that that isn't an issue for you because you know everything. Good for you. The translator doesn't know what this is. They just say, my car is a. My car is a great car. My car is a noun. My car is an adjective. Has also huge grammar implications, and your translators won't know that. So let's improve it. Most getText implementations allow you to give translators notes. If you can't capture it in code, you can capture it in a nice comment. This is going to be paired with the company logo. That might be relevant. It might not be relevant to the actual translation, but it helps the translator get in the mindset of your learner, which will help them give your learners better translations. We took my suggestion, oh, good job. We took these out, no more HTML, and we're actually passing a variable name that not only can a translator move this variable around based on the proper grammar syntax, but we also tell them what it is. Okay, it's a car model. I should have actually probably named this car model, because model is even a little bit ambiguous. It could be a clay model versus, who knows. That might be important, and I think the thing you'll find is the things you don't think about end up being important when you go into a new locale that you aren't familiar with. Plurals. This is fun. Does anyone speak Arabic here? Great. How are plurals? Does this work? No. Oh, it doesn't work. Weird. Yeah, there are 6 of them. So this doesn't capture a lot of plural cases. This might work for English. It might work for Spanish, where you have these binary plurals of plural or not plural. But there's a method for that. You can use nGetText. nGetText will, because a lot of languages do just have singular or plural, you're just going to pass in the singular or the plural, and then the cardinality that you're going to be switching based on. But what NGetText is going to do for you, this is most things. This is Arabic. This is Welsh. And NGetText will actually display the right pluralization based on the cardinality that you pass it, so you don't have to think about it, and your learners have a better experience where they aren't confused. Like, they'll get it. You showed them 6, and then you showed them the wrong pluralization. Okay, great, I have 5 car. I understand, but it feels weird, and it makes me feel like you don't care about the learner, and obviously you do, but little things like this, which are easy if you know about them, can make a huge difference to your learners. Dates. Dates are important to localize. There isn't actually a lot to talk about here. If we're using Python, the date time is going to be localized for you if you set the locale, and that will work in most cases. If you're using, there are also frameworks like Moment.js if you're doing something on the front end. It's just another note, pay attention. Like, your users are noticing, the learners are noticing when you don't do this, and it's so easy to just set it and then use your string print time and just have it work. Now, managing translations is another key component. We use transifex. Anant or Joel, I think Joel talked about that a little bit. We like transifex because it's free for open source projects, which is great if you're also open source. You can leverage some crowdsourced translations and help bring, we at edX have not contributed any of our Arabic things, but we have great partners who have, and that means that open edX instances can choose to use Arabic if they want. And there are many more, and the community can really control the amount of translations. If, like, you have a deadline and you really want to get something out, Transifex also has paid translation services that are actually very high quality, we've found, but also a lot of that is up to you, making sure that you wrap the strings properly. Like, you give them the power to give you good translations. It's also important to make sure that you have a varied array of file formats. We were using just Django, and we switched to also having some JavaScript-based translations, and just being able to click download as JSON was very easy, and it meant we didn't have to do anything. So if you're choosing a translation management provider, it's important to think of those things because you don't know what you're going to need. So having kept some of those things in mind may help you down the road. So that's it for best practices. Where do you start? You just finished your X block and you want to contribute it back. You just finished this piece of code and you didn't really think about internationalization. Where do you start? And honestly, start small. Wrap the content. Don't worry about HTML lang attribute. Don't worry about the fact that in Japanese, a check mark can actually mean you're wrong. There are tons of improvements. You're never done internationalizing. You're never done. But as long as you're continually providing value, it's going to get better and better and better, and your users are going to have a better experience every single time. And it's often better to give them the translations first, even if they're not 100% right, because it's better than not giving them any translation. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Start delivering value and keep delivering value. There are also a lot of great resources that you can use. Former edXer Serena Kainlink has a great PyCon talk about I18N, highly worth watching. You may notice some of the slides are a little hijacked. She gave a great talk, and it was a great inspiration for some of the things in here. Still very relevant. We have an I18N Open edX Slack channel. You should definitely be on that if you have questions. We have a mailing list that is the same people that are on that Slack channel. We have an I18N tools GitHub repository. Look at that. You don't have to, don't reinvent the wheel. We've done a lot of, we at edX and we, the open source community, have done a lot of the work. So see what we've done first. And we have a lot of great documentation on edX best practices, open edX best practices, what we strive for in internationalization. So with that, we want to open it up for some questions. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Pierre. Unicode.
You know where I'm going with this, because there are some parts of the code that doesn't support Unicode because we're still running in Python 2.
Yep. Yeah, that Unicode is, we were trying to keep this talk in particular somewhat language agnostic, but let's be honest, we're doing a lot of it in Python. So Unicode is an important consideration. If we go all the way back to this guy breaks. I didn't put my little Unicode string here. Ned has a great talk that you should all watch called the Unicode Sandwich. This getText, we're using uGetText. That means we're returning a Unicode string, which means you need Unicode across the board. So that is an important consideration and something...
Especially in French with accentuated characters that won't resolve if you don't support Unicode.
Right. So yes. I don't know exactly what your question is, but it is a great point that I think everyone should keep in mind. Unicode is important, especially when you are outside of English, which is, hello, most of what we're talking about here. So definitely make sure you're considering Unicode. I definitely check out Ned's talk. It's very helpful and insightful. Yeah.
There is one caveat on the detecting the language. There is one caveat on the language detection. On some countries, like I'm from Jordan and I work at edX, it's in Arabic, much like edX. So the thing is that a big portion of our users, including me, are using an English browser on an English OS and expecting from edX to show in Arabic. So that's a puzzle. So this is one additional, yeah. So yeah, this is one additional implementation that at least we, the local folks, have to think about. So maybe edX can show a default English, but at edX it's not appropriate because 98% of our users are expecting us to show the English page. So we have a cool open source PR, but it's local on our fork. So if anyone maybe you, Pierre, want to have that facility to show a default French page on your open edX. So that's one additional thing besides URLs and except language.
Yeah, definitely. That is a great point. Yeah.
Hi. I can't remember the name, but for Spanish language, there are also variations because Spanish from Spain is some kind different from Spanish from Mexico or Argentina or whatever. But also, could we maintain a difference between Spanish formal or polite versus Spanish more casual from young people or something like that?
Sorry, could you repeat that last part? Just want to make sure I get to the whole thing.
Can we manage Spanish variations?
Mm-hmm.
And also, for example, if I want a more formal or polite version of a Spanish translation, make a fork or duplicate or something, and have all this kind of stuff in the same instance?
Yeah, so that is totally doable. We, for our current strategy, are only planning on delivering one, so we thought it easier just to resolve to Spanish and not worry exactly about regions. But all of the detection logic that I talked about handles regions. It's all meant to handle regions. So you can have Spain Spanish and Argentinian Spanish and Colombian Spanish and Mexican Spanish. They can all live side by side. And if you want, say you wanted to just have formal Spanish and informal Spanish and not care about the locale, you can actually have custom, I know Python supports it, you can have custom locales where you could have ESF and ESC, and you can write your own logic to determine which one you want to be showing and write your translations based on that, and you can provide your translators comments similarly so that they know how to best translate that content appropriately.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, how many specialists do we need to fully translate the platform? I mean, is it enough to have one translator and one backend developer? Or do we need anybody else?
I think it depends. It depends a lot on your needs. If you have the ability to hire a translation manager, then that is probably one of the better case scenarios. If you want to do open source translations, that's great, but it's harder. It takes a lot longer. You don't, depending on who. They may not read the comments that you wrote because it might just be super excited and just dive right in, and it's their first time on Transifex, and so there are a lot of things to consider. I think depending on the scope of work, one person can definitely be enough, but it depends on what your needs are. If it's mostly language content, that's one thing. If it is a lot of back-end work to swap out images and show different icons, and there are a lot of considerations. I mean, Jasper showed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it really depends on your needs. As your site advances, we ourselves just hired a marketing manager for Spanish, and he's done a great job helping us really even modify and make better some of the translations that we had from our paid translation service. And so as your needs grow and as you need to switch out content, it might make sense to hire somebody like that so that you can really give your learner the best experience. Cool. I think we've got, sorry, thank you. We've got 2 more minutes left, so let's take gentleman here.
Hello, I'm from Portugal. I've been making sites for a long time, and I also have internationalization issues. And from my findings, I have 2 things that I would like to ask. First is, why do you use English as your source for the dictionary instead of a semantic, source, let's say? Because when you say my car is and you're supposed to be a model, and then you have a variable model, I know. But sometimes the variable is more generic, and maybe it doesn't, on that web page it means model, and on the other page it may mean other things. So sometimes it uses semantic, it's different, and I think it's better. And the second thing is, what about big strings? This is okay for, let's say, 80 characters, maybe 100 characters, but sometimes you have on site big characters. And what I usually do is I put that on file system, and then I have multiple files using for different languages. Do you have any guidelines for that?
So to address your question a little bit, most of what we've localized is very small snippets of text. They're mostly UI localizations to help our learners really find the courses that they're looking for. We haven't really come across a use case currently, and we definitely will in the future. But for right now, the few pages that we really focused on were much shorter strings, and so we haven't bumped into that problem yet.
Yeah, I think the important thing is to make sure you're giving. It's a balance. It's definitely, there's no right way. You could have 10 paragraphs, and that might be what the minimum that you need to give the context to the translator to really do a good job. But if one paragraph is enough to get that context, then you can minimize every change needing a full retranslation if you're using something like that. If you have in-house translation, then that's another component that you might not need to consider. So I think it definitely is dependent upon your particular needs. But I'm happy to talk to, that's all the time we have for this presentation, but definitely find us afterwards. We're happy to talk about it more. If people are really interested, we can put together a birds of a feather meeting and have everyone meet up. So definitely find us for that. Thanks a lot.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Badi Ibrahim. I'm Managing Director at UNISEX and Director of Digital Learning at UNIS Education Group. This is Isabelle Druet, and she's my colleague, project manager, and she's especially in charge of our engineering schools. Very excited to be here, just like you guys as well. And we've been a long-term friend and early adopter of OpenEdX, also early contributor. So we're very excited to learn from everyone during the conferences and also to share our own experiences and best practices. Today we'll tell you about how we've been creating synergies between our higher education institutions, and we'll be talking about flipped classrooms, project-driven pedagogical model. Few words about UNIS Education Group. We're one of the largest higher education group in France. We have schools in all fields: marketing, communication, technology, design, fashion, pretty much everything. And I think the only thing stable at UNIS Education Group is change. We've been changing a lot. We question our model, the pedagogy between everything that we do, and digital learning is driving a lot of the changes. Just a look back at history. Initially, UNIS Executive Learning has been addressing the need for continuing education, and since 2013 we have merged both the continuing education as well as the digital learning aspect at the UNIS Education Group level. So we've been doing obviously a lot of MOOCs, SPOCs, we've been doing flipped classrooms, and we'll tell you about this. Since now 2 years, we're doing a lot more online degrees. So let's dig into that with Isabelle.
Thank you, Betty. So the focus of our talk today will be really sharing experience, tools and processes, and there will be 2 themes for that. In the first part, I will tell you how we have been able to enable synergies among institutions. Actually, we'll take the example of 4 engineering schools in our group, where we have implemented flipped classroom for undergraduate students. And in the second part, Badi will tell you about higher education to lifelong learning with project-based learning for working professionals, explaining you how we have used existing content and deploy it for a wide variety of programs. So we will focus on keys to success and new needs and share our experience. So let's talk about flipped classroom. This is what we wanted to achieve. For obvious reason, our group thought back in 2014 that it was time to adopt more online courses and introduce online courses and deploy a flipped classroom for our undergraduate students in our engineering schools, but also engineering schools, business schools, sorry. So the idea was for each of the schools to have a customized program where you could customize both online and offline by having, like in any flipped classroom, you know, online content, but because we have different schools, we wanted to have also the possibility to customize what would be available online, and also have the possibility to have tutoring, support classes, all the kind of things that you can have with flipped classroom, and have a wide variety of teaching. So this is the this is the situation we have for the engineering schools. We have 4 of them in our group, and each of them has a specific focus or specialization. ESME Sudria is pretty much a generalist engineering school. Subbiotech here is into biotechnology. IPSA is in aeronautics, and EPITA is a school for information technologies. So how do you make a flipped classroom for these 4 very different orientated schools? Well, especially in the undergraduate, at the undergraduate level, there is pretty much there is a good opportunity to make synergies because there is common content, especially in math, physics, and information technologies. So this is where we put our focus, where we put our focus or priorities to start with. We decided to work on these 3 big subjects. And the scenario solution that we opted for was to look at where we could standardize the online components, but also allow for specialization, both online and offline or in face-to-face class. So let's look at it into more details. This is the curriculum for math in the 2nd year, so semester 3 and 4 for our 4 schools. You see here that there are many, many lines. There are about 40 in total, and there are different colors which correspond to different chapters. It could be probabilities, statistics, different chapters in the mathematics course for the 2nd year. And each chapter is split into different notions. The key notion will correspond to what we call a micro module. And this is what we use in edX. We define macro models which correspond to just 1 line here, so 1 notion. And then each of the school correspond to 1 of the columns here. So you have EPITA, IPSA, ESME, and then Subbiotech. And once we have put all this curriculum, the complete curriculum of the group together, each of the school is going to select with a green box which of the micro module they are interested in, and they pre-select them before they are produced. And at this stage, this is where we see where we can make synergies and where we build the whole thing in a transverse manner, because as you can see, for many of the modules, they will be developed not just for 1 school like here, but for 2 like here, or 3 or even 4 schools. The module that we program or input in edX are pretty much standardized. This is because our modules are going to be independent from one another. The typical 30-minute module will include a little text with content and objectives of the module. And then there will be some 1 or more videos depending on the length of the subject. And then training exercises with solutions. So you see that here, this is typically a screenshot of a video followed directly with training questions with solution. This is very important, obviously, which is, it's really part of the learning experience. And then also something that we always have, and we insist in our instructors to develop this systematically, is a summary in PDF format here, which students like to download and print sometimes, where they can add their personal notes or compare, they can compare it with their notes. Also, sometimes there is additional content with links to explore. And at the end, there will be also systematically an evaluation quiz, followed by this component here, which is for feedback. The feedback component is at the end of the quiz, and it will enable us to get some more analytics about it. There are two questions. What was it? It's about the perception of the comprehension and also the quality of the course. Here you see the typical structure, always just one section in each module with sections. There is a high level of coordination when you want to work with several schools like this. At several steps of the process, of the production process, you are going to send information to the various schools, and they will validate things, send feedback, check the content, and this is, of course, an iterative process where you start from needs, and then you have all the course definition. Then in green you have the production steps, and then the running of the course, leading to new needs, and etc. Something really a key learning from our experience is that having the teachers from the 4 schools chatting the school of the lead author is something very important, not only for not only to avoid mistakes, but also for them to really get involved in the course and deploy it in their schools afterwards. This is our shared production dashboard. You see the different columns. So this is a tool that I use on a daily basis with the instructors I work with. You see the columns that we had before with the chapter, the module, and here what is very important is not only the objectives and skill of each module, but the content. The content, we give a little details, and we agree on them with the 4 lead instructors representing each of the schools. With saying, for instance, if the module is about is in physics, then we say there will be the definition of this and this and this, and it will be applied to this, and there will be maybe this theorem, and do you demonstrate it or not, that kind of thing. This avoids rework afterwards once the presentation for the video is made. This we have mentioned before. The author, it's quite important that the author will be also using the course. This is reducing communication and matching better the needs. And this production dashboard is also used to follow the production status. So you see the different steps that are in process or finished or planned. And then there are the links to the platform where the instructors can input and also the other instructors can check the content. This is our what our interface looks like for administration, and you see that the different modules are indexed with skills and then are selected to make made-to-measure programs or courses for the schools. And then this is what students will follow, and we can have introduction videos specific to each school, showing the interest of the subject, for instance. So to conclude, the flipped classroom with Open edX for us, there are a few takeaways. This has been now 3 years that we have used this in our group for more than 5,000 students at undergraduate level, and we are now preparing for master's level. Collaboration with teachers is something which is obviously very important, and the role of each of them is something that has to be quite well defined. And obviously, edX enabled us to split the course into small independent units, and organizing flipped classroom with quite a good experience for undergraduates. Well, now I will pass it on to Betty for the second part. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isabel. I talked about change, and Isabel is not telling you here how much hassle we had, but if you have questions, we'll be happy to share about the whole process. What I mean by change is we didn't do flipped classroom as a goodie. It's something that we enforced for all students in all engineering schools. That's part of the curriculum, and they do it from the first year. And they do it for major courses, maths, physics, and IT. So we can talk about change management, obviously, but we didn't give much choices. That's the way we chose to do it at UNIS Education Group. And now looking back, I think we're pretty happy because we can go from creating material with independent units, what we have called micromodules, and that's things that happen here. Basically, from the institutions that we have, we create material, and from there we can go from undergraduate to a lot more different ways to use this content. And I was very happy to hear the keynote this morning, because we've talked about some of the ways that you have to learn today. And if I put in perspective, 10 to 15 years ago, we created schools. We had a lot of schools, engineering schools and so on, but we observed that our audience was changing. People didn't want to just do a bachelor, master, or an MBA, but they wanted to get practical. They wanted to be active. They wanted to actually contribute. And that's one of the reasons why we've been implementing flipped classrooms. We did it because we thought that school, the way we were practicing it, wasn't working. We had people attending classes, basically watching a show. Sometimes the show was good, sometimes it wasn't. And we thought, hey, let's get rid of that. We want to have our students that get practical, come in class to do practical work with each other, the basics behind flipped classrooms, and not just watch a course. So building all of this material, the micromodules, we are today able to, of course, deliver online degrees in the typical shape, masters, bachelors, or MBAs. We do it either in a blended format, so you have some time that will be spent in the institution, some time that will be spent outside in a remote way. But you may also choose to do what Anand was talking about this morning. I think he called it professional certificates. That's basically what we call our continuing education. You want to get better skills, updated skills, or you could choose to go for something that's a bit more practical. I think the big shift now and for years to come is to actually explore more career-specific, focused kind of paths. I want to be a community manager. I want to be a growth hacker. I want to be a whatever, web marketer. And I'm not really interested in pursuing a so-called degree that may allow me to do this job or that job. And I think we're getting more practical. We have people that want to exercise sooner and maybe change job every few years. So you have two ways to access this material. When you are part of our students, you basically have all of the flipped classrooms material that you have access to. And when you are not part of our schools, you may also choose to access content in an open way, and from there choose a path that will lead you to either a career, better skills, or an actual degree. That's, I think, the favorable ecosystems that we have been able to build together with our institutions in the group. Now, talking about the school aspect, I think what we realized a few years ago is that we didn't want to be a content library. We have a lot of courses, and I think it's good that we have courses, but content is only part of what we're doing. We also build project activities that students and other professionals use in order to progress and get better. And we also have, obviously, a big community of experts. And with these three elements that I think are part of any higher education institution, we are able to deliver what students, learners are looking for: recognized degree, skills, much better skills, and an actual career that you can grow towards. Now, there are a lot of pedagogical models, and I'm not saying here that we have the best model, but I think with this process and with this ecosystem, we are able to find the suited format for different learners. So, for instance, if you were in a blended environment, then our content would be part of the solution. Practical projects will be also part of your curriculum, and then you may have also all the sorts of master classes, whether you are assisting to those, attending those classes physically or remotely. But you could also do it in a self-paced mode, and in this case, we would insist much more on the projects that are the practical side, and courses would only be here to help you acquire knowledge that you would have to actually use when conducting your projects, whether individually or with a group. I give you an example. I'm not sure about the figures in your different institutions, but for us, a typical master's program, and I'm talking about the 2 years, that would be about 400 hours of physical courses time that you would spend. In digital format, obviously, you adapt and you get much shorter in a typical micro module that is about 20 to 30 minutes long with everything and all the structure that Isabel has presented. You would have about 200 hours worth of material, and that would be about 400 micro modules. So once you have that collection of micro modules, you can use them to build the appropriate path, and you really want to focus on which projects you're going to put in place in order to test and validate that the skill is acquired. And this is something that we do because we think is good, but it's also something that we do because in France, that is the way that you can deliver a degree that is actually recognized by the state. So along the years, we have explored different formats, and we have seen that you could find suitable something very structured. I have my program, maybe I'm conducting a bachelor or I'm following a master, and I'm going to start in September. I'm going to have several projects that I'm going to do along the path. and I will have some work that I will do with my peers in groups. I think that's a good model. It works, especially in blended format. But it doesn't suit everyone's schedule, and not everyone wants to wait until, let's say, September or January in order to start the course. Not everyone is sure about the kind of course or the kind of path that they may want to follow. And so we found that the self-paced model is really suited for other kind of learners. Now, typically for blended format, you would have some flexibility, but you would still tie in with group projects and tutors that will support you along your learning. While in self-paced mode, we are somehow more in an open model where you can start anytime, you're not really sure what you're getting into, and at some point, if you want to get credit for what you've done, we'll let you pass certain projects individually, and we'll focus much more on the benefits from the overall community. And so here, we're more in the usual school, you know it, but all in a distant mode, while here we're more into a community management driven kind of school. And I think both have great values, and we'll see years from now whether this model or that model gets more popular. So in order to do that, of course, we were supported by edX, and we've used edX a certain way, but we've also added a few components. Typically, we've added features in order to support the whole project, which is a big part of the learning path. We've added a lot of tools, social tools, collaborative tools. We've added a lot of tracking metrics, for example, whether in flexible mode or in more structure mode. We found that you don't have to force people to talk to each other, but by showing them their statistics, they get some sort of emulation. And so, for example, when you start giving metrics about how much time learners have spent on the platform and what kind of skills they're able to acquire, the percentage of competency that they get, and you display those results within not a whole group cohort, but within a few single individuals. They help each other, and they're able to grow together. So beyond that, we've also used a lot of third-party tools as well as developed our own tools. Here's an example of a platform that we use. The learners will typically do a lot of projects. Many of those projects rely on video, and they will upload their work and get graded, and both peers and tutors and teachers will add comments in order to help them progress. So, a few takeaways. I think having a unique governance, we are driving the digital transformation of the group helps. Obviously, whatever a business school is able to contribute, an engineering school will benefit from. And at the same time, having a management that believes that digital helps us deliver better education, I think is key, not because education or edtech is good and fashion, but because we think it's efficient. We don't focus that much on courses, we don't focus that much on quizzes, but we focus on results. What kind of skills have you been able to acquire, to which extent, and where can you go from there? So we definitely believe that competency-based and project-based pedagogical model works for us. We think it's good, and we also believe that we have to be able to adjust models, because when we built this structured model, we thought it was perfect, and at the same time we realized that a lot of learners were not able to benefit from it. So the self-paced mode shows that it can definitely help acquire and nurture a lot more people. So, Isabel, if you want to add a few inputs.
Well, we would like to insist on the change management dimension. This is something that we have put in place in our group among the different partners, whether they are the directions of the schools, whether they are the instructors or the teachers themselves. There is a lot of getting all the people working together, not just learning new techniques, but also learning to collaborate together and not separately. Something that has been very important for us is to think of the scenario independently from the content. Sometimes we can use the content in flipped classroom or use it in project-based learning. So thinking about the scenario and the way you are going to evaluate the students is something quite important and should be thought, well, of course, if you build a new course ahead of it, but then you can think of different ways using the same course material. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, just one last word, and we'll be happy to take a few questions. But I think there's a lot of competition out there, and competition not from other higher education institutions. There's competition from everyone that pretends today to train you, and there's a good competition, bad competition. And I'm very excited to see what we can do together as a community at Open edX, because we can obviously benefit from technology, from models, practical, pedagogical ways to do things. But I think if we're not able to adapt also to what people are looking for, they may rely on other big players. And I'm talking about some guys that have big platforms on the web. I think we really have to work together, and so that's our contribution, and very happy to share and learn also from you guys.
Okay. Yes.
Hi. First, thank you for a very interesting presentation. I want to ask about the economic models of the joint ventures of the universities. Is it more of like Spock's style, or how does it work in terms of business model?
Okay, business model for us as a private higher education group is extremely important, and we have to be sustainable just like everyone, but we have even to do more. We have to make some sort of profit. That's why we've been away from the MOOC model. We value it for some aspects, but there's no business model, at least not for us. And so today, when we work with our schools and we create material and our schools benefit from it, obviously they pay for that, and but that's internally. Externally, we have today people that follow our online degrees or certifications. They also pay for it. It's much more accessible than if you were paying for the standard way to acquire a master or an MBA in face-to-face. And I'm very happy that it's getting more popular, and obviously we're getting better at having a good business model. That's also the reason why we've introduced this self-paced mode, because we thought that this was still a bit too expensive and still a bit too complicated. So here there's absolutely no commitment. You can start, you can stop whenever you want, and you can eventually pursue few certifications, a bit like the MicroMaster model, and then follow up with a full degree online if you wish to do so.
So just a follow-up question. So the Taylor model or the blended one are ones that universities pay you. So their students that take the course, they don't need to pay any additional fee, right?
You can consider them internal clients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you, is there some data available about the completion dates of the people in self-paced or otherwise? So I offered a course in plain MOOCs and also in self-paced. And my observation was that irrespective of both the modes, the passing, the people who actually attempt the final quizzes and all that is always at the end. So whether whatever you keep it open for 6 months as a self-paced MOOC or keep it timed that every week I'll release these things and the final date is so and so. But the people who attempt the quizzes typically would be towards the end. What is your observation in such a case?
The way we solve the problem is by making quizzes and all these kind of evaluations absolutely optional. They are here just to help you get assurance, but in fact the only important thing for lifelong learning programs is the projects that you have to realize. And that's the only important thing. Whether you watch the course or not, we don't care. Whether you make the quizzes or not, we don't care. In undergraduate programs, it's a bit different because they are younger, they are not as mature, and so we are still watching closely, and we have built also tools on top of analytics that edX provides in order to watch closely what they've watched, what they've responded, and whether they are making progress.
Yes. Can you perhaps expand on how projects work and more specifically how they are evaluated?
Actually, the way projects works is you will have a few different courses and you'll have skills to obtain in order to acquire and fulfill the pedagogical objective. And so we'll build a case. It could vary, of course, in the different shape. It could be, let's say, to build a business plan, for example, as part of an MBA degree. And you would have to, of course, work individually also as a group in order to build that project in a technical degree, let's say a master of IT. You will have to build, for example, a web application. And this is what will be evaluated. And that's where automation gets more complicated. If we're only doing quizzes, of course, automation would be easier. When we are doing evaluation on projects, that's where we use our experts in order to help and rate the different projects.
So is the evaluation done synchronously, like a presentation? I created this project.
Absolutely. It is.
Slides and all. Okay. And is it, is it through a video or is it in the same room?
There are various ways. Video is one of the methods that we use, but it's not the only one. It could be coding something and submitting the Git repo, for example. I think we have to stop, but I'll be happy to answer any other questions if you want afterward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.